doing a little something every day can build up to something big really fast. 10 years ago, Mary Jo Hoffman began a daily creative practice. Choosing nature as a subject matter seemed a perfect choice as she walked daily with the family puggle by the lakes and in the woods near her home. Gathering up local specimens and making them into beautiful images wasn't an obvious leap from Mary Jo's life as an aerospace engineer, but it did become a place of calm, somewhere to find the quiet and the still. Arranged with careful consideration, the images document, captivate, and engage. Her photographic vignettes are a mix of collections that display a wondrous range of colour, shape, and textures. At her home in Minnesota, Mary Jo has an envious collection of natural objects, enough to see her through the winter months, while her extensive image library now contains over 3,500 images. With her aptly named blog, Still, which showcases her work, Mary Jo's beautiful images have appeared on products for Target and West Elm, been written about on blogs and in magazines, and she is currently working on a jam-packed book investigating 72 micro-seasons. Constantly open to the beauty of these changing seasons, describing herself as an artist who uses a camera, we are delighted to say hello to Mary Jo, who joins us from her home in Minnesota today. And you, wherever you are. If you are joining us live, please leave a comment and let us know where you are in the world. And if you are catching up on a replay, we hope you enjoy the conversation and share it with your friends. So without further ado, let's get started and welcome Mary Jo Hoffman, our 63rd Friday feature artist. Hello, Mary Jo, and
Hello.
welcome.
That was a beautiful intro. Thank you. That was lovely. So nice. So thoughtful.
This is like the perfect joining of pocket finds meets still. And apologies, everybody, that we did have a few technical hitches this morning. So we're happy to be here live now. And I know we've got lots of people joining us. So we'll just flash up and welcome everybody. So thank you so much.
Venezuela, awesome. North Carolina.
A swamp rabbit. Wow, so it's great.
Oh, wow. I love it. All over the world.
Yes, it's good when we can fit the time zones to kind of meet at least a few people. So that's fantastic. Now, as usual, we've got so much to get through and look at, and where do we start? So where do we start indeed? So what we're going to do is we've actually got a video of you in action through discovering and just chatting a bit about your process, and also the actual process, the capturing, the photographing. So I know that people are going to have lots of questions surrounding that. So we're actually going to play a video, and thanks to Twin Cities Broadcasting for that. So we'll just show that, and then we'll come back and chat more. So I'm sure everyone will really enjoy this.
I was a tomboy. I was outside all day. I built dozens and dozens and dozens of forts. We were just outside all the time. One of those kids that got on a bike at 9 in the morning on a summer day and came home just in time for dinner. It feels like a cliche to say, my source of inspiration is nature. I have reverence for nature. I would say that's the word, is reverence. I really feel like Mother Nature has solved most problems. And so I just think it's infinitely inspiring. Oh, that's really, really pretty. These ferns are curling on the ends. Oh my gosh, I've never seen that. I bet it's only gonna last one day. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna try and photograph this, but there's a possibility if I snip a frond that they'll go limp as soon as I do. That's crazy pretty. I really got into photography when, in college, when I was given a SLR camera. And then I started doing visual journaling, sort of like sketching, collaging. sugar wrappers in French cafes. So it just slowly added as the kids got older and I got more free time, I could add more and more creative outlets to my life. I don't know if I want to do that. Ooh, that's good. Steve and I, my husband Steve, we've always thought that we would retire into a creative career. He's always had ambitions to be a writer. I always had ambitions to be a photographer, visual artist, collage artist, or painter. We would sort of set ourselves up. We'd prepare to be creative in our retirement. A lot of people were doing these project-a-days, and they're very popular, and they've launched tons of artists. And I thought, I want to do something like that. It didn't take long to look around my house and see, the bowl full of rocks from Lake Superior and the bowl full of sea glass from the Mediterranean, without even realizing it, that I was a nature collector. What I collect is nature. Color family. Some nice shadows, I think, actually. Give it some depth. I just feel like there's too much stimulus today. There's too much stuff coming in. There's too much advertising and too much color, and it's too loud and it's too bright. So for me, still was this quiet place. It's white on white. It's very quiet. You look at one thing, it's usually floating on the white background because I just wanted it to be calm, and people have responded to that. It's a quirky nature blog from Shoreview, Minnesota, but it hit a nerve, it hit a zeitgeist that people like the calm of the images. Seed pods and bugs. And this is what I call delicate bits. Yeah, eucalyptus seed pods. These are from wild grapevines here. Beetle-eaten leaves, sometimes called skeleton leaves. My process can be repeated, but my portfolio can't now. Those ferns that we just photographed today with their little droopy tips, I've never seen that before. I may not see it again, Jack! Good boy! The blog has been an absolute life enhancer. Like, I can take my walk in the morning, I can photograph my subject in the afternoon, and I can edit it at night. And I think that's part of the reason the daily blog challenge became a life enhancer, because it never became a life detractor. It never got in the way. I did it as a creative challenge. It was to have a creative exercise so I could grow as an artist. But what happened, what I did not expect, is that it became part of our family lifestyle. The whole family, we're all naturalists now. When I'm creating, I can get into deep play where I can lift up my head and 2 hours have gone by and it felt like a minute. I can imagine doing this forever because nature is infinitely varied and I won't ever exhaust it, and it won't get boring. I could study it, I could photograph it, I could document it for the rest of my life. What'd you find?
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. That's amazing. The two things I love about that in particular are your impression of the drooping fern. Those drawers. I mean, we're totally going to come back to the drawers later. So to backtrack a little bit, that idea that you mentioned of adding creative outlets to your life. I mean, you also have an undergrad in aerospace engineering.
Actually, a graduate degree, yes.
Sorry, a graduate, and the master's in aeronautics and astronautics.
Oh, yeah.
And you left your job as an aerospace engineer to focus more on your family. So how important was it at that time to make that change?
I got a master's degree in aeronautics and astronautics, and I went to work for an avionics company, Honeywell, that sells it's the cockpits of commercial airplanes. And my group that I hired into, we did what was called flight management system. So it's essentially the GPS system for airplanes. You put your route in Minneapolis, Melbourne, and that's the computer that computes the air route. I did that for 17 years. I loved it. And then after 17 years, what happened is, the company I was working for got acquired and it was less fun. But also I had my daughter at age 35, and then we had trouble having a second child. And so when the corporate acquisition happened, and then I ended up being in the middle of several years of fertility, so that it became clear, like the fertility doctor essentially said, this is your last try, that, maybe it's the job. And I said, I can't be, I love my job. And, but I traveled a lot for my job, and I did love my job, but with corporate acquisitions and everything, it was stressful and I had to travel a lot. So I said, my husband and I said, we got to try. And I quit, and voila, we had a son a year later. She was right. She was absolutely right. So it worked out. So after 17 years in corporate aerospace research, I was used to, I was used to engaging my mind a little bit more than to a toddler at home. So my husband, then the stay-at-home dad, and then we switched roles. So then I was full-time stay-at-home mom. So anyways, that's where the idea, I need a creative outlet. And like I said in the video, we'd always wanted to do that.
Yeah. And I see around that time, there was a lot of those sort of projects like Lisa Congdon's Collection a Day. Yep. And around 2010, which doesn't seem that long ago, but there we are. Blogs were a huge new way to share information and connect with like-minded people. Right. And often for women who left the paid workforce and perhaps were isolated at home with young children, I mean, that was somewhere fantastic to go. And so is that what was your experience of that?
The blog? That. I was home. I was actually a late adopter on blogging. I was a late adopter to social media. I'm still not on Facebook to this day. I use Instagram, which I know is now owned by Facebook, but it was my, being a visual artist, Instagram made sense to me. So I was a late adopter, but I wanted to do a creative project. And the other, you mentioned Lisa Congdon. She was a huge inspiration for me. Her Collection a Day was one of the things that got me thinking, I want to do a daily challenge. The other one was Austin Kleon's book, Show Your Work. That simple, profound little book, Show Your Work. And in it, he had a quote, he's quoting himself for a page that said, do good work and put it where people can see it. And I'd been a creative dabbler my whole life, and you saw the visual journals and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't sharing it. Those journals are on my shelf, and my photos were on my hard drive, and I wasn't sharing it with anyone except family and friends. And so I saw that quote, and it was just the right, 12 words at the right time. And a light bulb went off, and I said, okay, I want to do this. And at the time, blogs were the way to get your work shared. And so I started with zero knowledge. I hadn't really even been a big blog reader. I just wanted to do a creative challenge. I wanted to share it. So then I had to literally Google, what is a blog? And back then it was eBlogger or WordPress. I mean, I didn't know anything, nothing. And so that's how it started. It was just, share your work, show your work. Yeah.
And I see in something that I've read in preparation for this, that the family did get involved with your daily project. Did they help you select your images? How was that?
Oh, absolutely. It right from the get-go became a family project. The kids were young and still really easy to engage. They weren't teenagers yet. So I have one really vivid scene of my son biking home from middle school, and I hope this doesn't disturb the boat. He's coming. We have a 1/4 mile long driveway. That in the video, that's what you saw, was the gravel driveway, and he's coming down the driveway on his bicycle, and there's something dangling from the handlebars. And he gets down and he goes, Mom, I got something for Still Blog. And I go, what is it? It's a dead mole. He found it on the sidewalk and brought it home. He was holding it by the tip of the tail.
Bless.
Bless. Yeah. So anyways, everybody became scouts, right? I mean, once they, everybody became a scout. Now it's not uncommon for me to get like shoe boxes on my front step. Somebody saying, I was out hiking this weekend and I saw this and thought you might like it. And so,
nice.
Yeah.
No pressure. Yeah. Like, no pressure to include, because then they're probably going to be staking out the blog to see if you use it.
I'm still doing it after 10 years. I haven't missed a day. And so I'm grateful for any help I can get in finding subjects. I'm still, every day I have to find something new. So, yeah.
So we've got lots of people joining us from all over the world, and feel free to leave your comments, as Jo has done here. Yes, lots of younger generations being inspired to collect. And so we will look at some of these images too. So leaves, I mean, I'm sure that when I was overseas, I was pottering around the grounds of a castle, and I'm sure I saw a woman pocket some leaves, and I thought, we are not the only ones that do this.
Oh no, every matter of fact, every time I pull a book off of a bookshelf, leaves fall out of it. I'm constantly snipping leaves and putting them in journals or books or absolutely.
And I just wanted to show a few more of the
wild
gorgeous varied images. So you describe yourself as an artist who uses a camera. And I couldn't help but think, if anyone asks you if it's difficult, do you shoot them back with, well, it's not rocket science?
I have used that expression.
Okay, now I've got that out of the way. But clearly there is knowledge and skill involved. So what camera did you start with, and kind of how has that evolved over time?
Yeah. I actually have some of my camera equipment right beside me because I thought you guys might be interested. So this is my camera. It's just a Canon 5D Mark IV, which is the current, standard for photographers. And believe it or not, I used to have a bigger lens on it, but I found this little 50 millimeter lens an absolute workhorse. And so I use it for everything now. It's like $150 lens and it's absolute gold. It's just a little workhorse. So I started the blog, philosophically, when I decided to do a challenge a day, I knew that it had to be simple. Like whatever it was, it had to be simple. So that's why nature, because I walked the dog, who back then was 2 years old. He's now 13. But I walked him every day in these trails like you saw on the video. And so, okay, I can pick something up while I'm walking the dog and then bring it home and photograph it. But I knew that everything had to be simple. And I don't really enjoy the high techness of photography. Like I don't enjoy equipment and lighting and that kind of thing. So I kept it very, very intentionally low tech. So as you saw in the video, I shoot on a white poster board, that you just buy at the craft store. I try to get the flat finish. And I do black images, some on pure black too. And then I use natural light. So it's by a window. And I started with just a Canon Rebel, it was called like a Rebel 3 or something. And it was, a really low end camera, a beginner's camera. And I did the first couple years like that. And then I eventually got a 5 and then I got a 7. And then I eventually went to the standard, the full Canon camera.
Yeah.
But that was only in the last couple of years. And with each of those upgrades, my pictures got better. But I have to say, I'll show you the piece of equipment that really, really improved my images. So I didn't even have a tripod the first, 2-3 years of doing still. I eventually got a tripod, but it wasn't until I added this auxiliary attachment that you put on your tripod that lets you turn the camera to go, 90 degrees. It wasn't until I got that my images really got a lot better. The camera, I could, they just got better. I didn't have to jimmy the tripod to get the right angle. So that's my equipment. That's it. I do use a diffuser sometimes if the sun is really bright.
Yeah, that's similar to my experience as well. starting with the sort of basic Canon, and like you, I realized that the 50mm lens was the key. And at one stage I rented the lens just to try it for a weekend, which was, an interesting resource. But then recently I was needing to upgrade my camera, but I thought I would just try out the new iPhone because it has the macro lenses. So so far that's been quite good too.
iPhone pictures are excellent now, and honestly, sometimes they're better than what I get on the the SLR camera.
Yeah, and it
really are.
Also,
they really are.
With that tripod, I had bags of rice in plastic bags attached to my tripod to weigh it down, and then I got one that had the arm that went over. So
the joystick. That makes a huge difference.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I've got some shots of studio envy here.
Yes.
I mean, that's great to see, and obviously, as you say, daylight, natural light plays a huge role there.
Yeah, that's at my studio. I actually it looks like there's a lot of light. It's actually part of a walkout basement, and so now it's become a lot of storage of specimens, and I end up shooting on my kitchen floor 90% of the time because I have skylights in my kitchen. And so I have windows, so I get light from above and from the side, and I can put a diffuser to
and obviously the floor makes more sense because you kind of do need that, because I've kind of had that. I start with the desktop and then I realize I need to be taller, and then I end up climbing up steps and things. It's better to
I give anything to be able to make my assemblages on a desk. I give anything. No, I have to do it on the floor so I can get the camera over it to photograph it. Yeah, I get it.
And so, I mean, goodness, this drawer is just incredible. To say that you've got a drawer of delicate bits, I mean, that's amazing as well.
Little tiny things that are pretty and interesting or have a nice shape or whatever. Yeah, I do. I started those flat files, 2 or 3, 4, 5 years into still because I live in Minnesota. And for those of you from other parts of the world, Minnesota is in the north central part of the United States. We border Canada, and we're landlocked in the dead center of the North American continent. And so we get a full 5-6 months of winter here. And so I just had to, I called it putting money in the bank. I just, in fall, I'd start to panic and think, oh my gosh, I have 5 months of winter. And by the end of winter, we'll have 2-3 feet of snow, and there's nothing sticking up at this little things out of the top of the snow. It's like I have to do this every day. I have to find a subject. So I started drawing things in spring and summer, fall that I could play with in the winter. And so it's like me.
And do you have to have a culling system every now and then, or just?
Oh, absolutely. And things break down. They really do. They do. The dried leaves, everything, they eventually get, I don't know, they just, even the feathers, I assume it's because they probably maybe have some mites on them or something. I don't know, but they're not very attractive. So yes, absolutely. And then I just put everything back outside in the woods. So
now I think this is probably Ursula or Ange saying that plastic fantastic 50mm lens. Yes.
It is. It's a workhorse, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. This is not, it's less than $200. It's by Canon. So I really recommend it.
And Carol would like to know what platform you use for the blog.
Yeah, I use WordPress. I started with WordPress. I didn't know anything about blogging, but my husband and I own a duplex, and our tenant was a young man who was a graphic designer. And I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, "Oh, you can't do that, any blogger. You should use WordPress." So the blog, if you go to it, stillblog.net, it hasn't changed since I started. So it was, but the design, it's like all minimalism, deceptively simple, right? So you land on the blog, and it's just the image. But I wanted full functionality in case I ever wanted a store, in case I ever wanted all that other stuff. And so there's a little tiny tab in the upper right. And if you click that, then all the functionality you would normally see on a landing page is there. So that nested functionality, he said, just go with WordPress.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, Catherine also has studio envy. Everyone's going to be looking on eBay or Marketplace to find drawers like that. I can't believe I gave mine away. I got rid of mine. I should have just sprayed them white. It would have made much more sense. Yeah.
I found mine on eBay or Craigslist here, I guess. And they were $60. Now they were like army green. They were U.S. Department of Transportation is what was stamped on them when I got them, and I spray painted them white. So
yeah, I should have paid more attention to Martha Stewart. I'm sure she would have done that. That's exactly what Martha would have done. Instead, we put wheels on our grey ones. We kind of moved them around a lot, but yeah, should have totally gone with the white thing. So, I mean, composition is a tricky business. So how long do you spend on your daily images? And I was wondering, how do you know when you've nailed it? And do you take more than one option of the same piece?
That's a great question. So I started still 10 years ago, and it became a life enhancer, like I said in that video. And so I didn't want to stop because it made me more aware of my surroundings. The whole family got engaged. I was learning about my natural environment. But when I conceived of the project, I thought what I was going to be working on is composition. Like I'm not very good at composition. I'm curious about it. I read books about it. And it just, other than the basics of composition, balance and symmetry and rule of thirds in photography, I just wanted to be better at it. So that was the reason I started the challenge. The irony is over 10 years, I've gotten really good at the technical stuff, which I never was that interested in. I've gotten super knowledgeable about my natural environment. Like I'm writing a book on the 72 microseasons of my bioregion. But the irony is composition is still really hard. It's still really hard. I think I have gotten better. I think really what has changed is I just learned to trust myself. And so instead of saying, is this good or not? I just say, do I like it or not? And if I like it, that's good enough. So that's what it comes down to. Like if I like it, then other people will too. And that's the beauty of a daily project, is that not every day has to be art, but every now and then you're going to make something that blows your mind, And so the dailiness, the urgency of the dailiness does tend to shut down that inner critic, but it also just takes
like a deadline
off of creating art. So the dailiness helps. So, but composition, so because the blog is daily, a lot of my compositions are just like a profile of a single stem. But when I have the time, I will make a composition like this one where I gather a bunch of stuff and I arrange it. And so those, like the shells, I will just start playing with shells. You'll see, I do a lot of sorting by color, and that's part of my compositional style. I like color stories. I find that color blocked or color sorted images are soothing. And so I just tend to do that. That one, for example, I opened up my plant press and I just started laying out, and really I'm just filling negative space. So there's not a ton of composition in that one, if you will. I'm just opening the press, taking a leaf out and filling. This is an interesting image in that all those items were very, very specific to a region. So I was trying to document Languedoc region of southern France, where we spend a lot of time as a family. And for me, that's what those elements, like if I think of Languedoc, that's what I think of. Figs, grapes, sea glass, all the things that are in that image. So for me, that's like, I call it, that's about, that image was about place. So I usually have when I'm doing a composition with more elements than just like a profile of a Queen Anne's lace, for example, then I usually kind of have something I want to say, I mean? Sometimes like the rainbow of dried flowers, it's just,
yeah. Sometimes the subjects kind of lead how the composition is going to go.
Yeah.
So, and so do you find that you do much post editing, and do you have advice for people that are trying, for beginners, and what to avoid in terms of sort of taking the editing process too far?
I do. So when I started, I used Photoshop Elements, which is just I think they give it free to students. Really basic photo editing tool. I now have the full Adobe Creative Suite. I only use Photoshop. I don't use Lightroom. I should. It would improve my workflow. But I use Photoshop. And what I've learned over the years is that the less I do to the image, the better the results. And so what I do in Photoshop is I crop, because I'll usually shoot just a little wider than I want so that I have room to crop it. And then I brighten that background to bright white or true black, whether I'm shooting on white or black. And that's tricky. And that, this isn't a photography class, but I do have a handful of tricks because often if you're photographing something, I wish I had a feather near me, the feather, like a blue jay feather, will be blue, but it'll have a white tip. And on that white background, when I lift my background, it disappears. So I've developed a few tricks, not difficult, of getting around that. But mostly I'm just lifting that background because in my mind still was supposed to be this quiet corner of the internet. And then when you got there, you would just scroll through these hopefully beautiful or interesting images of nature, and that I didn't want like gray. I love gray, but there's a billion shades of gray, and I didn't want I wanted that scrolling to be seamless.
Yeah.
That's what true white or true black, because otherwise you'd be going from green grays to blue grays to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every image would jump. And I wanted this streamless, this smooth, calm, quiet place. And so that's why I chose the bright white. It's very, very stylized.
So just those images of your studio, it looks like that you're using natural light most of the time, and that it was sort of like a very light space. And Kelly wanted to know, what do you do when it's cloudy?
Oh, cloudy days are the best. Sun is by far the hardest. This Mediterranean sun is super hard for me. Cloud is great because I like my aesthetic. If you look at most of my images, there's very, very soft shadows. And so if it's cloudy, I don't need a diffuser. If there's snow on my skylights, I don't need a diffuser. It's like a perfect diffuser. But if it's bright light, I get harsh shadows. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I like it. It's not my aesthetic. It's a very popular aesthetic right now. But it's not mine. So mine is just with soft light and soft shadows. And so cloudy days are actually preferred.
And for those of you that are not aware of a diffuser,
that's yep.
Yeah, so obviously it can go outside as well as inside.
Yeah. So one of the things was still, so it's, this white, it's often one image or a little arrangement like yours, like pocket finds. But every now and then I want to show like the abundance of something, like that field of thistles there that was on a highway entrance ramp. And so I will go out and take my equipment out to photograph. Because I can't arrange that many thistles on my kitchen floor. Yeah.
Now, what was I going to? I really wanted to know about the Eco Dye project. I mean, that also sounds so interesting. So, the idea of documenting and recording is obviously part of your everyday practice anyway. And then we go to this. I'm
glad you brought that up because I know that a lot of your listeners are fiber artists. And so what happened was this is natural dyeing, but with paper instead of fibers. And I'll tell you how it got started. So my best friend got that book from Toronto Ink. I think it's Make Ink or something.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Gorgeous.
Don't have it with it. And she brought it to my house and said, "You're foraging all the time. You have all this biomaterial. we should do this. And I said, I don't need another hobby. This keeps me busy. I'm not going to be a textile artist. It's like, that's a whole world to itself. And I don't, So anyways, I looked at that book, and the book was so beautiful that I was like, okay, I got to try this. But it was on making ink, not dye. And so that I thought, and I do visual journals, which was shown in that video. So I thought, well, I'll make some inks and then I'll paint with them in my journals. And then, so I started boiling down my plants, black walnuts and all the things. And I made these, I got these beautiful dyes. And then when I tried to reduce them down to inks to be able to paint with them, they often got destroyed. It was very hard to do. The heat often destroyed the not like black walnut, that's easy, but some of the more delicate colors. So anyways, I kind of stopped at this halfway point between making dye and making ink. And then I thought, well, what can I do with this? And so I started just dyeing paper, like you saw in that image, just sheets of
paper.
And then that piled up. And what happened is a woman who was building a restaurant a mile from my house, she came in and she goes, oh my God, I love that palette. What is this? I said, it's dyed paper. And she said, let's make art for the restaurant. So that's what I ended up doing. So in that lower thumbnail there, you see us installing that at the restaurant. So that's 8 feet by 4 feet, 8 feet long, almost 3 meters, and then 1.5 meters wide. And all those are natural dyed inks with stuff found within the 3 miles of the restaurant, except for the avocado, which doesn't grow in Minnesota. But I didn't have time to find any other reds. So, but everything was found naturally. So the interesting thing is I used, for you fiber artists, I was dyeing paper, any paper I could find. But what I found is if I use cotton rag paper, which is essentially like a textile, which is used for archival photography, but, is also like a high quality watercolor paper, archival water paper, then I could soak the paper for up to overnight to concentrate the dye on the paper. So anyways, I ended up doing natural dyeing with cotton rag paper, which is just like textiles. So I ended up doing it, and I love it. I love it so much. It's like a mad chemist.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm sure your listeners have dabbled with it. It's so much fun. It's so much fun because you don't know what colors you're going to get. And then of course I immediately started mixing things. Because the thing with the natural dyes is if the material has tannin in it, it tends to be more light fast. So I'm always adding things with tannin to other it was just so much.
And I was assuming that you did back in the day math and physics, but did you also do biology? And has all this kind of like kind of triggered a sort of interest in learning more about the plant specimens and the sort of biology aspect of it?
If you look at my images, you can see that one of my early one of my influences, obviously, old botanical prints. This is sort of maybe a very modern take. My images are very stylized. They're very graphic. I'm sometimes just looking at form. I'm not trying to document this is Queen Anne's lace, for example. Yeah. A lot of times I'm looking just at negative space. So a lot of times it's the graphic quality of the images that I'm drawn to. So
I loved that one. That one that I just showed up then, and we were talking about that the other day, and I said, I really love that. Like, I don't have that near me. And you were saying that it was milkweed. So I looked up, but apparently it's Queensland and I'm in Sydney, or it's north of me.
Oh, okay.
It can just be within my grasp at some point.
My book agent is from California, and she told me, so milkweed for us is a super common, it's on every roadside, it's everywhere. It is absolutely beautiful, but it's very common. Then my book agent was telling me she vacationed up in the Northeast United States, up in Connecticut or something, and she ran into this beautiful plant with this beautiful seed pod, and then she described it was milkweed. And I mean, it's a roadside weed here. And she's like going on, and I thought, oh, that's I would assume most Americans would know what milkweed is, but she's from California and never seen it. So,
This would be like
oh yeah.
me with my Banksias, where people sort of say, oh, like what planet are you on? Like this is just, people see this as exotic, and they're kind of just
really is,
they're in the neighborhood everywhere, but they never lose.
We have a family joke because when we were in southern France in Languedoc, we don't grow lunaria here, not wild. People put it in their gardens, those seed pods with the little, like 3 little black seeds in it, that silver dollar kind of, I think that's called money.
Oh yeah, yes, I love that. We don't have that either.
Lunaria.
That's on my list. Mm.
So I saw it in the wild in southern France, and I was across the street and I just screamed, seed pods, and I ran across the street. And so now the kids all the time, seed pods, just to tease me, And we did a road trip recently to Canberra, and I can't believe the amount of different eucalyptus. And it's so frustrating as you're going round to yet another roundabout in Canberra, and you're like, but I need to get out and get eucalyptus seeds. Eucalyptus seeds. Ironically, eucalyptus is one of my favorite subjects, but it doesn't grow here. But my daughter lives in California, so I do get a fix every now and then. It is actually one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah.
Although, it's not native to California. It's native to Australia, and so it has this mixed. People feel mixed about it in California. Yeah.
So you mentioned before about the micro seasons and the book, and we've got an image here. Yeah. So this is something that you're working on at the moment. Tell us more. That looks amazing.
I'm in negotiations for a contract with the publisher. Okay. So, we both want it to happen. We're just dotting I's and crossing T's at the moment. And that's what I was doing this afternoon, matter of fact. So I think it will happen. And I've been wanting to do a still book for a couple years, and I didn't know how I wanted to structure it. Just doing 4 seasons felt cliched, and doing like a color sweep felt too cute. And so I couldn't figure out how do I do this. And then a couple years ago, I was reading Kenya Hara, who's this Japanese designer, happens to be one of my favorite designers. He was writing, he had this little book called White, and little book. And I was reading in it, and he mentions this one paragraph. Anybody else reading the book would just have read past it, because it wasn't the subject of the book. But he talked about how in 500 years ago, the Chinese had a system of 24 microseasons, and then the Japanese adopted that, but refined it to 72 microseasons, and how the Japanese calendar can be set up as these 72 microseasons, each one lasting about 5 days. And that at the time, if you were part of the educated elite, you knew the 72 microseasons, like, you know what I mean? That was your calendar. But when he said that, I just was floored, because I had independently come to the same conclusion myself from doing still for 10 years. I had realized that things show up and then go in about 5-day increments. Like the fiddleheads. You didn't have the fiddleheads, but I just posted it on Instagram yesterday. The Fiddlehead Ferns, they just showed up 3 days ago. They're going to be gone. Those are full fronds tomorrow or the next day. It's about 5 days that I get, So when I saw this micro seasons, I was like, this correlates exactly with what I've been experiencing. And then suddenly I had a structure for the book, which is about dailiness and daily attentiveness and paying attention to your bioregion, having a sense of place and a certain knowledge about your place. And so that's going to be the structure of the book. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll all be there ready for the pre-order when
Awesome.
So we were talking about sense of place, and you mentioned France, and I saw that pre-pandemic you spent a bit of time there. So you obviously continued your daily practice there as well.
Absolutely.
Did you enjoy the different subject matter, and are you planning on going back?
I absolutely. My experience was still in doing still in France is really interesting. I loved it. So my husband and I put our kids in French immersion school, And when they got out of elementary school, we wanted to take them to France and put them in school so they could become fluent and not just conversational. So we did that. And of course, we're from the north. We picked a place near the Mediterranean so it would be warm. That simple. Kind of threw a dart at the map and went. And of course, then as it happens, the kids did fine. They enjoyed it. But Steve and I fell in love with the village and the villagers, and especially our neighbor. And it's a grape region, or a wine region. He's what I would call grape farmer. So he's a farmer who grows grapes, and he sells them to the wineries. And I had just started doing still, and my mom didn't get it, my friends didn't get it. It was my little thing. And I get there, and the grape farmer next door, he immediately gets it, right? He's like so proud of his acquired knowledge about his region. And he was the very first one to start giving me shoeboxes full of stuff, where then he had one of these little French fourgonnettes, those little minivans they have there. And he would come home from working in the vines, and he'd open the back of his truck, and it'd be all sorts of stuff for me. I just want to make sure you saw this. And it's Mediterranean France. It's the same flora as Southern California. It's called Garrigue there. It's called Chaparral in California. Completely foreign to me. I mean, very little shared between the two. Between Minnesota and Mediterranean France. So but the interesting thing about it was, because I was so interested in the details of their place in this rural area, it was like a golden ticket to getting immersed in the village. Like suddenly they knew we just didn't come to drink wine and get sunburns. They knew we were there for something much deeper. And so it was a fabulous experience doing it in Southern France.
Wow. It
also ironically made me very, how if you live in a place all your life, you can't see it with your eyes. It's really hard. And so suddenly when, everything there is dry and prickly and thorny, and just every plant works so hard and then here it's lush and limp. There's no thorns. We have no poisonous insects because winter kills them, not other predators. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like completely different bioregions.
Yeah,
it just helped me understand my own home better by being that immersed in another bioregion. So it was great.
Great. I'm just going to pop up a question from Janet, who wants to know if you're hooked in with botanical colors.
Instead of washing their clothes, no, I'm not. I'll look into it.
I know the Make Ink book is the Jason Logan book, that I also had to buy. I haven't actually made the ink yet, but it's just, it's just something that you just want to sit with because the book is so gorgeous.
Oh, good. I can't wait. I love good book referrals. Yeah.
So you were saying about your grape farmer, how he got it and that other people haven't necessarily always got it. But clearly West Elm and Target got it when how did that sort of come about?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. I started the blog in January 1st, 2012. That's the betting I did for Target Corporation. Now, granted, Target Corporation is headquartered in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. So what happened there is I'd put a post on Instagram and saying, boy, I sure would like to make some textiles using my images. I was thinking like tea towels and napkins. And then a gal that lives near me but used to work at Target sent it to her old boss and said, and so that just like that was a connection that you might expect when you live in the city that's headquartered. And then West Elm, honestly, I think it was Instagram. The interesting thing about how I got all that, and West Elm did wall hangings. I don't know if I shared those pictures with you.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
I probably didn't. But but the interesting thing was how it all started. So I started the blog. I really expected 5 followers. I kind of thought it would be a bit like my mom and my best friend, but like they weren't interested. So, anyways, I started, and then what happened is that young tenant who had the duplex that I told you about, he helped me do the blog design, and he charged me next to nothing for his time. So as a thank you to him, I nominated him for an online, I didn't know what I was doing, just Googled awards for graphic designers, and nominated him for an award, thinking it would drive traffic for him, and used my blog as the thing. Well, it won. It won an award for perfect minimalism. And so, and he had said this was really a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, because I wanted it so minimal, So anyway, he won an award, and then it got posted, as a winning a thing, and then people saw it. So I was just trying to do a thank you to him, and it ended up driving all this traffic to the site. None of them were interested in nature. They were all graphic designers, but they were in the creative community, and they saw it, and then it got traction. So the very first media I got was somebody from Design Sponge. Remember that blog back then?
Yeah, I loved that.
So a scout for them asked if they could feature me. And then when they did that, because that used to be huge back in 2012, when they did that, then Martha Stewart Living, the magazine, saw it, and then they called. So it just snowballed. One thing to amazing. And then once I was in Martha Stewart Living, which is as it was national magazine, then suddenly all the local press was like, we don't know who this person is. And so it snowballed. Yeah. So, when Target finally, you get the connection to Target, that makes sense. Yeah. But that was year 3, and, Martha Stewart was year 1. So
amazing.
So show your work. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Show your work.
Yeah, ahead of the curve. And as time marches on, I've got 3 technical questions. Mm-hmm. One, I kind of, when you look at prints of your work, are you have you got a fancy printer, or are you outsourcing your prints, or how do you go about kind of with that side of the?
Okay, I do sell prints. I have teamed with a local fine art printer. Turns out I bought a printer early on, and I tried to fulfill print orders. I don't remember my desire to keep it simple and not do the technical part of photography. I mean, printers are worse than cameras. They need to be calibrated, and I like everything about printers. So I quickly learned I don't want to print prints myself. So a local fine art printer contacted me, and I said, let's try it. He goes, I'll do all the fulfillment. You just send me the orders. And so that's what I do for individual artists or individual people that want to buy a print. I just forward it on to him, and he sells the prints. And so he prints on archival paper and to any size the person wants. And after that, I'm out of it. I do handle all the requests for digital images, and I sell to a lot of designers, and where they do the in-house printing, and I just sell the high-res digital file. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy that process. I enjoy seeing what they do with the images. So I
was thinking that too. Like, now that you've got over 3,600 images, I mean, you've obviously got an amazing digital storage system. If you filed them under season or species or color filing, what do you mean filing?
That's why I should be using Lightroom. That would be really great. No, I don't, and it's crazy. And my fine art printer gives me a hard time about every single time I see him. But no, I just have a file folder called Still Master on my desktop that I do have backed up 3 times. But other than that, I have gotten better. But you know what? I post the image to Still every night, and you do put tags in WordPress when you make a post about what that is about. So I can always go into my blog and keyword search to find an image. So Lightroom would do the same thing for me, but because I have the blog, I can always find an image.
And then have you got the JPEG on a terabyte hard drive or cloud or?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have it. I did learn, and I didn't know this at the beginning. For probably 5 years, I just had one folder on my desktop called Still Master. Now I have it. I learned from a graphic designer friend that I should have it backed up in 3 different places. So I do. I have a hard drive and the physically separate hard drive. Yeah.
Now, the other technical question was, you and I were talking about, because I was saying often the challenge for people is kind of the depth of field thing, because you've got the flat thing and then you've got the thing on top, and you want to get that in focus and you want to get the thing underneath in focus.
Right.
I mean, yeah, we were having a great chat about apertures the other day, but do you just kind of have a go-to setting for?
I've evolved to a go-to setting. I was recently going through my whole archive because I'm working on a book and realizing, I used to play with depth of field a lot. I did over the years. And that's the beauty of doing a project over a long period of time. You can try things out and say, it is more artful with a shallow depth of field, or just part of the image is the part you want is in focus. Everything else is soft. I find for what I'm doing, which is this sort of pseudoscientific, modern botanical print, that I want a fairly large depth of field on everything. I would, for the most part, want everything in focus. And so I tend to shoot, because I'm on a tripod and I'm perfectly still with soft light, I tend to shoot f/22. And photographers would roll over in their grave, but I find that that's a really, really small aperture that gives a really long depth of field. Usually the camera lens is open for, it's like, that kind of thing. But what I find is that when the lens is open like that, I get even softer light. But that's just my personal style. But it took me years to evolve to that. I think I started with shooting most everything at f/8 and then playing, which is your standard. You see what, you pretty much see what it's a standard place to start in photography. But now I'm playing with f/22.
And like I said before, when you have things on the floor, that gives you that, obviously then you're further away. So
So I'm getting depth with shadow, soft shadow. And some of my things don't have depth. They're more flat. When I'm doing, sometimes I'm just going for graphic shape or whatever. But, I use shadow usually to give the image a little bit of depth. Yeah. Yeah. Instead of focus, instead of transition to out of focus. Yeah.
Oh, this was an image that I was looking for before when you were talking about getting your work out there and showing your work. Now, I believe that this is more of a mock-up rather than...
Right. So when you do an image a day for 10 years, you have a lot of images. And often, so I post one a day, but often I'll take and edit 2 or 3. So really my archive now is not 3,800 images. It's more like 8,000, 7,000 images. And so when you do that many images, you have a lot. So I was just playing with ideas of what I could do. And part of my thing about still, part of the 72 microseasons is about being of a place, knowing your place, having a relationship with place, having stewardship with place, reverence for your place. It's sort of, hashtag love where you live. So anyways, that's come out of doing still that, when I'm that attentive to in my environment, every day is exciting. Every trip to the grocery store is exciting because I noticed exactly when things are happening. So anyways, I have 7,000 images. And so I was playing with stuff to do. And I did a mock-up of some banners I'd like to put in our local airport, Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. And I have that contact for the art buyer at the airport. So, and he's interested. I just haven't had time to follow up. So I do intend to do that. And I just haven't had time to do it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that idea of, like going back to my Banksia, sometimes I kind of walk past and think, oh, do not pick up another one. Like you have a whole basket of them. Do not do that again. Sometimes do you have to kind of sit there and think, well, what am I actually going to do tomorrow? Because I've done a whole lot of brown or green, or how do you kind of go about
it's
directing the
absolutely
choice?
a challenge. I mean, there's certain subjects like seed pods, ferns, milkweed that you showed, that I will never tire photographing. Oh, and I live on a lake, so cattails. I think you guys know cattails. Yeah. So there's certain subjects that I just, if they're blooming, budding, wilting, whatever, I will photograph them, even though I've already did it 10 times, because it's been 10 years. But other than that, I try to keep it fresh on the blog. There are people that start their morning every day with tea and a quick peek at my blog. And so I try not to be repetitive and routine. And so, yes, it's a daily challenge to find something new. And that's part of the fun, actually.
I love this one, which I think you captioned with ignoring storm warnings.
Yeah. That's a really good example of how challenging winter is, because that's me cutting up the anthurium, which is just a house plant, with an X-Acto blade. So some days I just was like, it's too cold, I'm not going out, and I'm going to cut up the house plant. Yeah.
And also too, I see that now you're mixing it up a bit with some food.
Yeah, my husband is a food writer and a text preparer. Funny combo. So anyways, we decided to collaborate last year. It was still COVID, and we were still, kind of had time to play like that. And so he got out his super, super sharp chef's knives and his mandolin, and he would slice and I would compose, and then we'd photograph. And I loved doing it. It was so fun. But it kind of took two of us, because, as you know, like apples, like you showed there, how when you cut them, immediately they start to brown. Yeah. I suppose I could have dipped them in lemon water, but, he was slicing and I was photographing, and it was fun. Yeah. I was making papyrus, which is sort of like a textile, actually. Yeah.
So despite our technical hitches, we have kind of been talking for an hour, so we will have to finish soon. And one thing I just wanted to ask about, we talked about the purpose of still and that finding the calm. So that idea of focusing on one thing, do you find that when you're photographing, it does become a form of meditation, or do you still need to go and do something else to get that to that happy place?
Yeah, no, when it's at its best. So sometimes, obviously, I'm chasing the light, right? So you can see the sun just set behind me. I have wait, I can't do it. Over there. See the sun? Like, in a pinch, I could come home and maybe make a photo with that little corner of light. So sometimes I'm chasing the light, and it's just stressful and it's not zen at all. But on a good day where I got a subject, I'm excited about the subject, and I have some time to play in the middle of the day, that's super deep play. That is deep play. That is so, matter of fact, I was in it the last 2 days. The ferns are unfurling here, and I love ferns. And I was so happy with my fern photos. And then I just was in deep play. So, anyways, at its best, it's meditation. It's, deep play is a form of, prayer, meditation, whatever you call it. I think they're finding now it's for the brain. It's all this, it does the same good. I mean, flow, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, at its best, and it still can do that for me. It just did yesterday with the ferns.
Yeah, amazing. So as we start to wrap this up, I mean, it'd be great, everybody who's watching, if you want to pop your comments of gratitude and thanks into the comment section, and we'll flash those up towards the end. I mean, I guess you're probably deep in one of your micro seasons now. Is that what you're working on now? And what are you looking forward to?
Actually, part of the reason, it's both. I said I was in deep play because I was so enamored with my ferns yesterday, but I'm also, I've got this I'm running out of daylight. In the north, our spring is really short. It's super short. So what we add to winter is stolen from spring. We still have a full summer. We still have a full autumn, but we steal from spring and add to winter. And then this year we had a 2-week late winter. I mean, late spring. So our spring, which is normally only 6 weeks at best, is now everything. I mean, everything has to happen in like 3 or 4 weeks. And so I am madly photographing like crazy because I'm working on this book. I need certain materials and it's all happening literally at once. And so it just is the weather, just the micro seasons piled on top of each other. And so, yeah, I'm crazy, madly photographing, buds.
In a slow and meditative way.
Yeah, right. Well, then I do get lost in the beauty. I mean, I really do. I really do. Yesterday, the ferns really, yeah, I did lose track of time. So,
wow. Yes. Yeah. And I've certainly lost track of time in the last hour. It's been amazing. Just, thanks for sharing your process and all those images and the video with us. And we all have delicate draw envy. And
yeah. Go ahead, Craigslist, and type in. Yeah. So I want to say I'm super honored to have been, for you guys to have asked to interview me. I looked through all the videos on your website. Wow. That's super exciting. The people you've interviewed, they were very, very inspiring, and I'm super honored to have been.
Yeah, it's an amazing resource, and just incredible the wide range of subjects and
honestly your format where you put the pictures in and stuff during the interview. It's beautiful. It's really, really well done.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, thank you once again. If you just hang there for a little minute, and I will play our exit video and also show up all the comments of gratitude and thanks. And I'm sure everyone has loved it as much as I have. So thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.
And yes, and have a great Nilly weekend, everybody. And thank you so much.